More Like Home by Like to Laugh on AO3. Chapter 8. So, if we're going to mix coating and paint, it looks like it needs to be at least 1/3 coating, and a bigger ratio of coating to paint increases the strength of the barrier, Danny explained, tapping the 2x4 he tested them on. But if I work on this for a few more hours, I think I can make the paint itself anti-phase, and then we don't have to worry about it. It'll be at full strength without looking off. Bruce grunted. Good work. Will it be done by the end of the week? Yeah, definitely. There was something familiar and wrenching about the way Danny looked up at him. Hopeful but unsure, like desperate for the positive attention he didn't get enough of. He seemed younger than most of Bruce's kids, more nervous, but not as cynical. Good, Bruce repeated, hoping that was enough. And the weapons? Danny pointed across the table, which had a small pile of bat and batarangs that now glowed a faint green. That's the last of them, except for Damien and Duke's. Duke isn't back yet, and I don't think I should modify one of Damien's katanas without asking him. Bruce nodded. That's a good call. He'll likely pick one for you. Danny gave him a relieved smile and then continued. I gave Jason another set of brass knuckles since I didn't bring the ectoguns. I can make him a custom one, but it'll take a while. He was comfortable with that because Jason was ghost adjacent, or was it desperation to complete his promise? And Bruce didn't miss that Danny understood enough of the basic ectogun mechanisms to expect to be able to make one without a reference. I'll expect he'll want both. All of them prefer to have options, and Jason might not always want to keep an ectogun on him when so rarely see to use it. Don't rush. You've made good progress. Danny beamed at him. He was easy to please. I need to ask you some questions about your clothing and your ghost form, Bruce said. Danny's expression turned wary, but he nodded for Bruce to continue. Does it retain its former's properties? Danny nodded hesitantly. I think so. At least my gloves and boots are still rubber, and they protect me from most shocks. And it's still resistant to acids. The vulnerability is antiphobic chemicals, though. And I don't think it used to be. Why is that? It's made of ectoplasm now, Danny explained, shifting uncomfortably. He grabbed one of the batarangs and fidgeted with it, avoiding Bruce's gaze. Ectoplasm is pretty versatile, so I think I'll be able to capture the properties the clothing is supposed to have. But it's still ectoplasm in the end. Bruce grunted. He hated magic and all the irrational rules that came with it. Is the outfit otherwise altered? Danny considered. The colors invert, he said after a moment, and it can't be taken off or dissolve into loose ectoplasm. It'll repair itself, though, and I can summon it back. I think that's it. Bruce nodded. Hopefully, the majority of Lucius's work would survive the transition to ectoplasm. Take this. He tossed a watch to Danny, who caught it and looked at it with confusion. This is your panic button. I expect you to wear it at all times. When pressed, it will broadcast an emergency signal to the Bat computer and the clock tower. He paused. You will use it in the event of kidnapping. Any kidnapping. This time, Bruce anticipated Danny's look of shock and stark insecurity. Are you sure? I can take care of myself, you know. I've gotten kidnapped plenty of times. I can handle it. Bruce grunted, hating the very idea of that. How many times had Danny been kidnapped where no one had even noticed he'd gone missing? Or only his teenage friends had known? Anything could have happened, and no one would have known until it was too late, or at all. It only takes once. Despite his flippancy, Danny knew enough about kidnappings that his expression darkened. He nodded slightly and set the watch aside. I'll have to open it up and ecto-proof it, but I'll wear it, I promise. Ecto-proof? Most tech fritzes out around ghosts. It's a pretty easy fix, though. He looked up at Bruce, uncertainty creeping into his expression again. I can handle it myself, if you trust me with your stuff. He glanced at the Bat computer. Make a list of what you need. Integrating a non-human. So far, exactly as Bruce anticipated. And start looking for another room in the manor. You need one with better cooling before summer. He turned his back on Danny, startled look, and headed to change into the cow. He asked Lucius to meet him in the usual place, a particular meeting room in Wayne Tower, and the man was surely waiting for him by now. He might even suspect why. These days, it was usually Tim who met with him to discuss equipment, with one consistent exception. A few minutes late, he swung into the fire escape just outside the room. Lucius was already at the table, laptop open, with an empty folder ready to receive notes. Yes, Lucius knew Bruce well, after more than 2 decades of working together. Batman? Lucius Fox acknowledged, inclining his head with a slight smile. It's always a pleasure to meet with you. To what do I owe the honor? A new member. Bruce pulled a folder of his own from under the cape and started to pull things out. Not much artistic freedom this time. It needs to look exactly like this. With inverted colors, he slid one sheet over, a painstakingly taken clear image of Phantom, with the head out of frame. Lucius peered down at the picture, taking the pattern and emblem. An established hero, then? Bruce nodded. Phantom. He's been starting with in the next few months. Should I incorporate the bat symbol? Lucius's eyes danced with a hint of amusement. Bruce ignored it. Yes, but don't remove the current emblem. What properties does this one need? Lucius asked, accepting the stack of papers, measurements, requirements, and a few notes of possible additions to the emblem. Bulletproofing, energy dispersing, and non-conductive, Bruce instructed. Fire and friction resistance, not to the speedster levels, but to account for flight at high speeds. It should be able to withstand freezing temperatures and have room for enhanced flexibility. Lucius's eyebrows rose. Another meta, then? A human hybrid, Bruce said. After a moment of conflicted deliberation, he elaborated. A ghost, specifically. His new suit should look and feel much like the original as possible. It was difficult to gauge how much of Danny's innate sentimentality should be coddled. How much weight did it give his instincts? But in the case, it wouldn't hurt. Lucius's forehead creased, but he nodded without hesitation. What was the original suit made out of? Dimron, Bruce said. He looked into it after Danny's original objection. with rubber gloves and boots sealed with zippers slightly loose to the account for teenage growth. No hood or mask. A hazmat suit, customized for work with electricity, chemicals without fumes, and low levels of radiation. Didn't help him, clearly, Lucius muttered. How do you acquire this one, then? This was a chemist, but that was a privilege Lucius had earned after his decades of loyalty. He was being scouted for the League. However, he was younger than initially assumed and in a vulnerable situation. He'll develop better under supervision. Lucius hummed without looking up from the stack of notes. You seem to like him, he said. He reminds me of Superman, Bruce admitted, looking down at the picture again. Forgiving, resilient, and a strong sense of responsibility. Intelligent, too. He'll do well once he has the maturity to temper his impulses. Lucius smiled. I'll look forward to seeing him join you. And will it now be effective against ghosts? Damien asked, leaning over his now glowing katana. What about Martians? Ghosts? Yes, Danny affirmed. Probably not Martians, though. They seem to use different mechanisms for phasing than ghosts do. Physically instead of dimensionally. Damien grunted. I will use this when we spar, he decided. However, you are not there yet. Come. Danny was a little nervous about where he stood with Damien. He was a couple years younger than Danny, but he acted older and more experienced. It was obvious that he was irritated with Danny's presence, even if he took it in stride, but he would try to push Danny out, convince Bruce that Danny was too much trouble. Danny tried to put the worries out of his mind, but they lingered stubbornly. Damien led Danny to a training room lined with mats, with dummies against a wall, and a few stands for dull training weapons. He turned sharply and examined Danny. With his usual critical eye, all the bats had it, Danny had noticed, but Damien made no attempt to mask it. Danny shifted his weight, instinctively bracing as if to fight, and then forced himself to relax. Damien ignored that. You are still injured, Damien decided. Danny grimaced. His hip had healed up until it was only a little tender, but his back was taking its sweet time. It's not a big deal. I have a burn on my back. That's not done healing yet, but as long as you don't hit me there, I'll barely notice. Damien nodded sharply, satisfied. We will start from the beginning. For the next 2 hours, they went over what Damien considered to be the basics. He had Danny practice different stances and guards that taught him to block and counter, and made him punch and strike until he couldn't do it without projecting more than Damien considered acceptable. When they finally took a break, Danny was more winded than Damien was. Your combat style is particular, Damien remarked, slow and clinical. Your maneuvering suggests a significant disadvantage in power, but when you make contact, you brace with the assumption of equal or greater strength. This is true wherever you're attacking or defending. Danny finished gulping, set his water aside. Really? I never noticed. I guess I fight a lot of other beings with super strength. I'm almost always stronger, but I also weigh about 30 pounds in my ghost form. So if they hit me and I'm not braced, I go flying. Is that a problem? Your maneuvering is fine, simply unusual in metas with strength enhancement. However, you will need to practice both styles of counterattack. You have only moderate super strength, so you will sometimes encounter opponents stronger than yourself. Your ability to brace in air presents an interesting contrast to other flying metas and will expand your options in such fights. The plain, burlesque discussion of his abilities made Danny's stomach twist, but at the same time, he felt almost like he should be taking notes. He really didn't want to ask Damien to repeat himself, and he didn't think Damien was the type to forgive repeat mistakes either. Noted, you've really been studying my fights? The idea was strange to him. Surely Robin had better things to do than watch shaky cell phone footage of old ghost fights. But Damien just nodded. It's important to familiarize yourself with the strengths, weaknesses, and fighting styles of your affiliates, Damien explained, annoyed but matter of fact. Failure to do so invites misunderstandings in the field. I would suggest you do the same. Danny nodded. He'd already spent time studying the varieties of other superheroes at work, but he could see how spending extra time on the bats was a good idea. Do you consider humans unworthy of your attention? Damien dropped his water bottle and had to snatch it again before it could hit the ground and spill. Sorry, what? You do not attack humans, Damien elaborated, observing Danny with sharp eyes. He had to tamp down the urge to turn invisible to escape the scrutiny. You do not anticipate attacks from humans despite their frequency. You reserve combat exclusively for your ghostly enemies and then flee. I wish to understand why. Oh, I'm a pushover? Danny cringed at the unamused look Damien gave him at that, harsh enough that Danny's visibility did flicker this time. I don't know, okay? I just never let go of the idea we were supposed to be on the same side. I was defending humans. They were defending humans. We should have been working together, and as long as I never attacked them, maybe eventually they would realize that. Damien clicked his tongue. The enemy of your enemy is not always your friend, Fenton, he said, deadly serious, particularly when your shared goal is so vague. You were maintaining the peace between dimensions. They were attempting to erase your kind from existence. Danny drank more water to avoid looking at him. Do not make that mistake in Gotham. Do not spare robbers because they are not traffickers. Do not allow officers to fire on you to maintain the peace with the police department. And do not hold yourself to a one-sided truce. You're right, Danny sighed, though he rolled his water bottle pensively between his hands. Never actually worked out for me, did it? Damien nodded sharply and moved on. Like most metahumans, you are overly dependent on your abilities and tend to overwhelm your opponents with raw power rather than skill. It is insufficient and embarrassing to watch, particularly when you clumsily apply your super strength in melee combat. Danny winced. Man, Damien really didn't know how to hold back. Well, I definitely wasn't winning any fights with the training I don't have, he said worriedly. Yeah, that's something I'd like to work on. Applying small amounts of power more efficiently would be good too. Yes. Damien frowned at him, and Danny braced himself. But what Damien said was, you have done adequately for the lack of mentorship you've had recently. Your low casualty rate is impressive. Danny blinked, then gave Damien a relieved smile. Thanks. Okay, so maybe Damien didn't hate him. Maybe he was just prickly. He was informally known as the Stabby Robin, and it wasn't for his friendly personality. That didn't mean he likes Danny, of course, but maybe he didn't have to worry quite so much about where they stood. Besides, Danny liked the way Damien talked about metahumans, clinical, brisk. He didn't give the impression of either liking or disliking them. He simply were, and Damien accounted for their abilities like he would a weapon. That gave Danny the courage to ask one of the questions that he had been bothering him ever since the idea of joining Batman on patrol first came up. "You don't think it's unfair for metahumans to fight humans?" Danny asked. Damien raised an eyebrow at him, and Danny rushed to elaborate. "I mean, it's one thing for you and the other bats. You're trained for this. But street-level crime, I mean, they're just regular people." Damien's expression smoothed out, but he still scoffed. "You're as bad as Khan." "It is as you said, Fenton. My siblings and I have the training and equipment to stand up to high-level metahumans. Father traveled the world for his training. Richard, Todd, and Drake have been training since childhood. Kane and I were born into the lifestyle. We have thousands of dollars of equipment that we use to take down common thugs. No one is under the illusion that it is a fair fight. But it need not be. Above all pretty notions of fairness and propriety, their violence must be stopped." Okay, that did make Danny feel a lot better about it when it was put that way. "You're right," he said, relieved. "Damage control first." Damien nodded. "Pennyworth should be done with dinner soon," he said, rising to his feet. "I will go shower and change for dinner. I suggest you do the same." "I'll catch up," Danny promised. It was a courtesy that Damien left without him. It let Danny wait a few minutes and then turn invisible before following. It wasn't that he felt unwelcome exactly. Everyone had been very clear about that they didn't mind Danny's presence, or at least didn't want him to think they did. But walking around in the manor made him feel twitchy. He wanted to know what he was walking into before anyone saw him. He knew that Bruce thought he trusted too easily, and he wasn't entirely wrong. Danny's willingness to put his faith in people had gotten him burned as often as not. And that meant, well, that he was used to getting burned. And all the love in the world couldn't stop him from getting hurt. So, becoming Bruce's ward, coming to live in his house, upgrading his gear to work on Ghost. He trusted Batman. He did. It was hard not to, knowing all the decades of good the man had done, but there was still a nervous edge to it, wondering where Bruce's boundaries sat, and where it wasn't safe to push him. He thought absently about the backpack stashed in his closet. Not hidden, but not in plain sight either. He grabbed his bug-out bag from home, the one he kept in case he needed to bolt on short notice, and he hadn't quite been able to make himself pack it yet. He didn't know what could go so wrong here that he need to run away, but, well, he kept it anyways. Step, light. Danny startled violently, looking over his shoulder. Cass smiled at him, looking unconcerned, and stepped up to fall in beside him. She pointed at his feet. "Sneaking," she said simply. Danny turned visible, wincing guiltily, but she didn't look bothered. "Quiet now. Can do better. Wait on back foot. Walking on toes less." Danny dropped a little, balancing low on the balls of his feet. She smiled and nodded. Good try. It took some concentration, changing both his weight distribution and the rhythm of his walk, but the difference was noticeable. His already soft footsteps were nearly silent, even to his enhanced ears. He gave her a shy smile. Thanks. Kaz nodded, moved along ahead of him, her footsteps completely soundless. Danny was impressed, despite the additional stealth. Her walk looked different from normal. That would have taken practice. Soft shoes, she added without looking back, and he realized that she was wearing ballet slippers. Would that be worth the effort of changing his regular footwear? It felt a little like giving in to the ghost, but it made him smile to himself. He'd think about it. Later that night, Bruce found a paper slipped into his pocket, which wasn't unusual. It suggested soft-soled shoes for Danny's suit. Knowing that Kaz had her reasons, Bruce just sighed and texted Lucius to let him know of the additional request. It wouldn't be the first last-minute addition.